So this morning I'm feeling I suppose I'm feeling a little bit of a mixture of nerves and excitement and pride today because I'm sharing a little bit more about my own personal journey, actually, my own personal journey in business. And I suppose the reason I've shared this is because so much gets talked about in terms of the need for growth and generating more clients and these things that celebrated the work ethic and the hustle culture and securing investment and all these things get celebrated. And the thing that I feel in my 19 years of business doesn't really get discussed is how do you do all that good stuff whilst also managing life. And for me, it was very much managing my family commitments. And today I'm going to share that journey. And I suppose the nervousness for me is sharing what went wrong on that journey, if I'm honest, what went wrong and how did I improve and resolve that situation. So that's the format for today. And I suppose I'll start with these. I'll start with a few simple questions that I had to ask myself a few years ago. And firstly, just to think about, just for you to assess how much you actually working. How many hours are you actually working as a business owner or business leader, self-employed, whatever it is? What is your working hours per week? Do you actually know, all the time? If that really is your reality, then be honest. But how many are you working and how do you feel about that situation? Now, that's an important question, actually, because um, if your default answer is, well, it's just what I need to do, Parag, then that's why I'm here today. Because I'm here to prove that isn't just doesn't have to be the default. It doesn't have to be this mindset of, well, I'm running a business, I need to be on it all the time. Because that's what I believed. And that belief system got me in a lot of trouble. So just be honest with yourself. You don't have to share that with me or anyone else at the moment. How many hours are you working? How do you feel about that reality? And what is your ideal? What would you actually like to be working? How many hours? Because you do have an opportunity to design your business to work for you and to work around your life and your family. Obviously, I'm talking about the family versus business juggle this morning. You do have that opportunity. Yes, you are going to have to change some things, and I will explain some of the key things that I changed, but it is achievable. And I'm hoping by the end of today, you can see that there is a different way of doing this and that everyone else's way of doing this does not have to be your reality. Because the stats year after year show that around a third of UK entrepreneurs suffer burnout at some form of the journey. In other words, they just can't do it anymore. They're physically and mentally, emotionally gone, drained, and that's not really the reality that any of us got into business for. So think about what your ideal really is, and I'm going to share how I what I did here and how I designed my life and my week to work for me. Because my journey, like most, has been a little bit of a roller coaster. A lot of success now, but it wasn't always the case. I started 19 years ago in 2007, and my first, there I was on my kitchen table on my own, trying to get this thing called a business started. And yeah, it was difficult. I had only one client after a year. And then I started to grow it. And the interesting thing is I started to grow it, but 6 years in, the reality was I was still struggling. And actually, here's my bank account. This is my bank statement 6 years into my journey in July 2013. And what it shows is I had 12 grand in the account and I was bringing in about 11K a month, but there was 21K going out. So I was running out of cash, and almost every entrepreneur I've come across at some point in the journey faces that issue. And as did I 6 years into my journey. The good thing was I knew how to deal with it. I had all the things I've learned as a coach. I took that on board. I had to shift my business model a bit. I'm not going to talk about cash flow management today. I've talked about it in a lot of my other webinars. But that was my first real big obstacle, was the cash challenge. And certainly for your businesses, for any of you been in that position, and if you haven't, you will be. For any of you that have been in that position, obviously cash is king, and knowing how to manage cash flow is critical. I had to make some big changes at that point, and I did. And I did. And as a result, my business continued. I didn't go broke. I got close, but I didn't. And actually, I started to grow the business further. And over the next 3 or 4 years, actually, I started achieving some great goals. Our clients started winning awards because of the results they were achieving in their business. This is Jeremy, who runs Clearly Renovations at our annual awards ceremony. I think this was in 2016. He won the award for the best customer service business. We started winning awards as well. As many of you know, we run our flagship group coaching program that started winning the award for the best program of its kind. And that's me with the award in 2016 as well. And in fact, I was doing well enough that I was being invited to share how I was achieving success with my fellow coaching community. I was there in a room with 150 other coaches telling them how I'd done this, how I'd grown my business, how I'd built these great programs, and how I was achieving success. It all looked great. It all looked great. And there I was in 2017 thinking, come on, growing the business, it's looking good, getting the accolades, getting the recognition. It's all good, isn't it? And the reality was, it wasn't. And this is the thing I didn't talk about at the time. This is the thing I was nervous about sharing even 10 years on. Because in the background, I was this person. I was running like a madman. I was on that hamster wheel and I was literally physically running. I remember this vividly. Some of you knew me back then. I used to run like these kind of sessions, my workshops, my CPDs, even my coaching sessions were all run live. And I just started a family. My daughter, I think, by this time was about 5. This is in 2017. So I was getting up after very little sleep. I also had a 2-year-old son. Sleep was low. Getting up, scrambling around, getting my daughter to nursery while my wife looked after my son. Get my daughter to nursery, run to the train, jump on a train, get off the train, run to a venue just near here in the city of London. Literally run. Getting in there at like 9:26, 9:27 to start a workshop at 9:30. That was my life. And I was damn good at, obviously, at the coaching, but I was running. And in between coaching sessions and workshops, I was squeezing in emails, dealing with issues, all the usual challenges of running a business, as well as running a family. And I believed that's just what you have to do. I believed in the people who said, you've got to hustle, you've got to be on it, you've got to be energized, you've got to be running, you've got to be doing. And one night there I was, lying in bed in 2017, and I started feeling a little bit sweaty and clammy. This was in the middle of the night, and me being me, I was only 44 at the time. Me being me, I thought, right, okay, I'll get up and I'll just go and throw some cold water on my face, calm myself down, go back to sleep. And so that's what I did. I got up and got up my bed. Next thing I knew, I was waking up on the floor in my bedroom, surrounded by an ambulance crew, and my wife screaming, thinking, what the hell just happened? And they were attaching these, what do you call it? This ECG thing to my chest. Suspected heart attack. And yeah. And so I was like, look, I'm feeling fine now, guys. I'm all right. That was my first reaction. They took me off in a stretcher, wheeled me out of my house. It was about 4 a.m. My wife standing there with my daughter, looking utterly shell-shocked and distraught. And the first thought in my head is, look, let them check me out. I'm fine. I don't know what happened. Maybe I've got a bit of a fever. Maybe I ate something weird. But that was my thought, and I'll be back. I'll be back in a few hours and get on with my work. So off to hospital I went, and they said, "Look, we need to do some tests on you." And the first thing they did was check my blood pressure, and uh, that's when the reality dawned because they checked my blood pressure, and it was 220 over 120. And my first thought was, I didn't know blood pressure went that high. And I said to the nurse, I said, um, "Can you do it again, please? Because I'm not sure that's right." And so she took my blood pressure again, and it was even higher. And at that point, I was like, "Oh shit!" I got the shock of my life. Um, and they kept me in hospital for 2 days, running tests, and thankfully, actually, all the tests were fine. I hadn't had a heart attack, but I was literally as high a risk as you can get of having a heart attack. And the one thing I remember about being in hospital was I was in this ward. I think there was four guys in there, and the guy opposite me, he never said a word because he was out the whole time. He was thin and gaunt and just looked really ill. The guy next to him was a really nice guy. He was really chatty. I think he was an electrician or something, but he was grossly overweight. Didn't look very well. And there was me, and I sat there thinking, what the hell is 44-year-old me? Quite, no, right weight, never smoked, um, played football for 20 years every week. What the hell was I doing sat in that ward on a Thursday morning? And it was stress. It was being that hamster wheel. It accumulated over time. Even though on the outside I was doing well, and I was doing well, the business was doing well, but the stress had accumulated, the stress of the juggle, the stress of the overwhelm, the stress of maybe bad sleep patterns as well. The diet had deteriorated. It had all compounded up. And that's when I realized I had to do something about this. I had to. It was staring me in the face. And so that's what I did. And I realized this way of running my business was obviously not sustainable for me. Sure, other people were working that way, maybe, and that I wasn't other people, and I had to change it. So I realized I had to get off this hamster wheel. I could not be that person anymore. So I went back to the drawing board. What were my goals? What did I actually want from owning and running my business? What did I want from that choice? Because I was an ex-accountant. I was a chartered accountant. I had a nice, fairly cushy job in the corporate world, earning a nice, decent salary. I could have gone back to that maybe, but I knew I knew what I wanted from my business. I certainly knew that. I knew that I got into this to help more people. I didn't want to just help a small number of people. I wanted to have a big impact on the business community, and I had this big 10-year goal of coaching 1,000 businesses. So I knew I wanted to have a big impact. That was my whole reason for doing it. Otherwise, I should have just gone back to having a job as an accountant. There's nothing wrong with that, but it's not what I wanted. I wanted to make an impact. I also knew that I wanted to build a better team so that it wasn't me winning awards, it was me and my team winning awards. And so from my business goals, I was really clear. I was really clear, guys. What I wasn't clear on is what I wanted personally from owning and running a business. And this is what I want to share with you. What did I change personally? Because this is what made the difference. This is how my hours, which were around 60 hours per week, if you did your calculation earlier on how many hours you were working, I was typically working 9 o'clock, the mad scramble in the morning, get one child off somewhere to a nursery, um, and then get to where I wanted to be about 9:15, and then typically working till 7, 8 o'clock, not really switching off. Repeat, repeat, repeat. I was on a 60-hour week. I had to reduce that. I had to change that. So I knew what I wanted business wise, but I hadn't defined what I wanted personally. I just thought the 60-hour week and that constant being on was normal. So I had to sit there and write these personal goals. Of course, number one was health. And I'm not here to talk about my health goals today, but of course that was important. And there were some major changes there in terms of my health and my nutrition, fasting, um, breathing, relaxation, all sorts of techniques there to help me improve my health. I also defined my goals around money because the thought had gone through my head: what if I'm not here? You know, what am I leaving for my kids and my wife? How is that being taken care of? So passive income and wealth creation were super, super important to me. I started studying that relentlessly. And I'd already started some investing at the time, and I really ramped that up. I ramped up my knowledge. I started studying it every single day because I understood that if something happened to me, I had to make sure that that was taken care of. And I'm sure many of you felt the same way in terms of where is the money coming from if something happens to you. Time was very important. I'll share what my goals were on time in a moment. I had to get really, really clear on this. Saying you want more time is not a goal. I'll show you what my time goals were. To get the importance here is to get clear and specific. And I also had to define what my goals around my key relationships. I think the relationship with my wife was tetchy at best, if I'm honest. She was stressed and a bit moody at times. I was stressed and definitely a bit moody at times. It wasn't going well. We weren't spending much proper time with each other. The relationships with my rest of the family were not, and friends were largely non-existent, if I'm being really honest. And I had to decide what I really wanted there. So what did I define on my time? This is what I want you all to think about. Have you defined, going back to my question at the start, how many hours would you like to work? What's your ideal week look like? I did that and I got really clear. So I defined a 32-hour week. I was doing about 60, 32 hours. Now it was 32 because I needed to do 8 school runs a week because we had 2 kids and um, they were going to 2 different schools. So my wife had to do 1 set of school runs. I had to do 1 set of school runs for most of the week. So 4 days of the week, I was basically 9 till 3. And then 1 day of the week, I was doing a few extra hours. So I had to build a week around school runs, which meant I had a 3:23 p.m. end time on my school run days. End times are really, really powerful, by the way, guys. I've talked about Parkinson's law before. Parkinson's law, we work to fill the available time. And a big mistake a lot of people make is they don't have an end time to their day. So you end up just drifting and working, and or you think you're working, but you're not. Well, you are, but it's inefficient because we work better when we have defined end times, deadlines. That's Parkinson's law. So I had a deadline for from when I was doing school runs, which was 3:23. 3:23 was the time that train over there in Cannon Street Station left the station to get me to my kids' my station at 3:38, and at 3:45 my kid walks out the door. I literally had to plan it that meticulously so that I knew when I was starting and ending my day. And was that 6-hour day pretty intense? It was absolutely intense. Yeah. But it was planned. It was intense, it was planned, and it worked. It was the only way I could claw back that time to to do the school run and actually to spend some time with my son. Otherwise, I was getting home at 7, 8 o'clock at night or finishing work and maybe kids' bedtime. That was it. And that's not what I wanted. That's not what I wanted. So I had a clear end time and I defined my 32 hours week was 50% working on my business and 50% working in my business, i.e. delivering coaching. So on the business was primarily a few hours a week with my team, the rest of the time on sales and marketing. And I defined that and I planned it in my diary. So I got really clear on how much time was I working and where was that time being spent. I also had a rule, and this was before even any of this happened. I also had a rule that I don't work weekends. That's just a personal choice. And when I turned 50, actually, 3.5 years ago, I added another time goal, which was 50 days off a year. And that was my gift to me on my 50th birthday, was I'm having 50 days off this year. And I mean real days off. I don't mean days off where I'm having quick Zoom calls. There was no laptops, none of that. I think I had four holidays that year, and I've kept that going since. I have 50 days off a year. I've built my business and designed my business to achieve all of that in the 9 years since I had my health scare. And it's doubled in that time. And I think that's the key thing. I've grown my business whilst working fewer hours. That's pretty cool. That was the dream for me because I didn't want to take my foot off and work fewer hours and the business to regress. I wanted the thing to grow because my whole motivation was help more people, but not at the expense of me. So I got clear on the parameters of how much I was working. Then I had to get clear on a few other things. So first of all, the why times 5. So one of my coaches actually got me to do a little exercise. And I said, look, I want my life back, basically. I want my life back. Why? Why do I want more time? Everyone tells me they want time, they want freedom of having their own business. Why? So this is an exercise for every one of you, can you write down 5 reasons why you want more time? And if you can't come up with at least 5 reasons in 1 minute, you probably don't want it enough. It's a nice to have. I actually came up with 10. And somewhere on my desk here, I've still got the original piece of paper where I scribbled down 10 reasons in about a minute why I wanted that time, why I wanted my life back. That told me this was important to me. It might not be important to you. It might not be important to every other entrepreneur, but it was important to me. So I wrote down the reasons why, and then I wrote down every quarter, every 90 days, what did I need to do to move towards that goal? There had to be some actions behind it. And that all of those went in my 90-day plan. And then I had to have a system of reminders and accountability to make sure I was following through on what I needed to do. And by the way, my wife came in very useful for that because she'd seen what had happened firsthand. But I had my wife, I had coaches, I had a diary, I had a team, I had a plan written down. These all served as a reminder and accountability system. So, and actually, the reasons why really was the catalyst for the change. So actually, I've shown this in a visual format. Actually, first of all, I wanted time off to go on holiday. Why did I want to go on a holiday? Couple of reasons. I like the sun, I like the beach, I like eating, and I like not having to think about work. I like walking, I like going at a slower pace of life sometimes. That was important to me. So I wrote that down. That's why I wanted it. What else was important for my time? The omelette. What's the omelette? The omelette is the was my ritual I introduced with my daughter, the daddy-daughter omelette afternoon. So she would come home from school, or me or my wife would pick her up 3:30ish, whatever it was, and we say, right, Wednesday afternoon, it's daddy-daughter omelette day. We would make an omelette together as a family meal. It was like our little ritual. She kind of enjoyed it. I kind of enjoyed it. So I got clear, right, that's what I want to do on a Wednesday afternoon. So after 3:30, there was nothing else in my diary because that's what I planned to do. Um, I still love playing sport. Actually, I don't play football anymore. I did my knee in a few years ago, so that's gone. But I still play cricket actually, and this is Greenwich Park. This was about a 5 minute walk from where I lived for 20 years, and I still play there now. And one of the biggest joys in life is playing cricket on a Thursday afternoon in Greenwich Park. So I set that as a goal. That's why I want some. That's why I want to finish at 3:30 or 4 o'clock on the Thursday, so I can play cricket. I wanted to spend some time with my boy and take him to do things. He's not particularly into cricket actually, but that's us at Lord's one day. Um, but just planning time of what would I want to do with my kids? What did I actually want to do? I mean, yes, it doesn't always go to plan with little kids, but there's a lot of yelling and screaming. And but but planning this time to do things with them has been really great. They're now 11 and 14. I haven't got that long left with the kids. My daughter's getting really busy with school now. So had I not planned that time, it wouldn't have happened. If I had not set these goals, it would not have happened. Straight up truth. So if you want this time, if you want a business and a life, whatever you think is important, you've got to define it. And the other thing is money. Money was important. Absolutely no doubt about it. Future wealth creation was important because of the reasons I've said to do with my health. But you have kids, you see what they cost you, and the holidays don't come cheap, and the lifestyle doesn't come cheap. I had to plan how I was creating that income, not just from my business, but from my investments. That had to be planned out and thought through. So there's just some of the things that I decided were important to me. So when you're talking about time and freedom, what does it mean to you? Define it or it will not happen. It cannot happen. You're just going to spend your time doing what I used to do, sitting in the office at 7:30 in the evening, answering emails and all that crap. If I'm honest, I didn't need to do it. I needed to reset where my focus was. Of course, clients are important. I'll come on to that. Of course, of course, the work and the business is important. But what I needed to do was change my mindset, first of all. And once I was clear on the life I wanted, I had to change my mindset. So, I mean, I'm sure most of you heard of fixed versus growth mindset. This is the research from Carol Dweck all those years ago, and the fact that some people still believe that this fixed mindset that they're that everything is set in life. There's nothing they can do about it. There's nothing they can do about their financial situation or their business or their relationships. And actually, what the research has shown is that our brains we have that neuroplasticity. Our brains can grow. Our brains can learn throughout life. We have the ability to change and expand our brains and our capabilities. There's a lot of debate about how much we can do that. If you're 5'8" like me, I could learn and grow as much as I can. I'm probably not going to be the next Michael Jordan, but I can learn how to be healthier. I can learn and improve all of that side of thing, which is something I've done a lot of. We all have that ability. And I had to look at my business and my health and go, right, where can I be better? How can I improve? And I remember that the reason I mention this is because when I went to see my doctor a few times after this had happened, and I remember I got two key messages really. That was it. Number one, don't eat so much, don't eat salt. That's what they all don't eat salt. And number two, you're probably going to be on medication for the rest of my life, of your life. Two fixed mindset responses. And my first thought was, okay, but how can I be better? I'm not just going to resort to taking a pill and that's my life. I mean, yes, I had to do that, but how can I improve the way I'm running my business and the way I'm running my health? Growth mindset. The other thing about mindset was I was stuck in this classic delusion of hours equating to success. Do more, work more, bang out more billable hours, just all that mindset. Was it getting me success? No, it landed me in hospital. It was a lie. It was a lie, guys. And I believe it is a lie. Of course, when we start our businesses, of course we've got to put the hours in. Of course we do. There's no other way of getting a business off the ground. But I was 10 years in and still working like a maniac. There was something badly wrong, and it started with my mindset and my beliefs. My belief that hours equals success. And that can't be true. I'll prove it to you. It can't be true. I'll share that this is the entrepreneur's delusion, the classic delusion that most businesses they grow, they get to a certain level of income. Now, only around 4 to 4.5% of UK businesses reach £1 million in revenue. And most businesses have tailed off before they get anywhere near that. Tailed off, i.e., declined in revenue until they fail. And even the ones that go past 1 million and grow and scale, many of those end up declining and failing. But the reason most businesses don't even get anywhere near that is their mindset is all wrong. Because to get a business off the ground, absolutely, you have to bust the gut, you have to take massive action, you have to sell, 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 and you have to do. Sell the work, do the work, sell the work, do the work. Once you get to a certain level, there's no more of you to go around. The mindset has to shift from business doer to leader, strategist, systems creator. It's a shift in mindset. It's a shift that many never make. And it's a shift I had to make. I had to think about my business completely differently. Rather than just, I'm the coach, I'm the expert, I'm the one doing the stuff here. I had to change that mindset. The other thing I had to look at was our products and services that we were offering the market. And many of you will recognize this. This is the hedgehog concept from Jim Collins' Good to Great. And I looked at our product offerings and I said, we can't just offer. We need to be much more streamlined with what we're offering the market. And I looked at our services and I looked at which one of our services really tick these three boxes in terms of what can we truly great at delivering, what are we really passionate about delivering, and what's actually the most profitable service. And for those of you that are offering multiple services, and I see this a lot, we work with a lot of construction firms and in those kind of sectors, and they've got different types of services. And when I ask them this question about the intersection of the three circles, they realize that their return per hour can be far, far greater on certain services than on others. It's just they never really analyze that question. And for us in coaching, you talk about these crude measures like number of hours, billable hours, or return per hour. And I looked at that, the economic side, but I also looked at what I really loved. And what I really loved was coaching people in groups and running workshops. And it turned out I was pretty good at it. So guess what? That's most of the coaching services that we now offer. So for those of you who've got multiple offerings, this is a very powerful way of looking at putting a lens across those and going, right, well, where do we choose to focus? Because I couldn't do everything. After the shock I had, couldn't do everything. I had to know where to streamline our offering. That's where I used the hedgehog concept. I also had to get a lot more militant with my time. And I observe that this is where a lot of entrepreneurs fall down. And when I say militant, I mean militant. So, first question, who is in control of where you are spending your time? Because every single one of us has a choice. We all have a choice. We all have the same hours in the day. Who's choosing where you spend your time? Is it you or is it someone else? Is it is it clients? Is it your family? Is it your team? Who is dictating where your energy and focus goes? And for most people, it's not them. It's absolutely not them. It's what's happening on the phone or what's happening on the email or in your office. That was the first thing I had to change. Now, how did I do that? First of all, I had to learn to be really good at saying no, and I'm really good at saying no. And what I mean by that is setting up boundaries in terms of how accessible you are, for example. So I showed you my time goals earlier and my boundaries of when I was working, when I was not working. So I remember we got referred to a physio business, actually a physio practice, and she said, "Oh, Parag, I'd really like to talk to you. We've got this business, and but it's it's a bit all consuming, and I'd love to know how you could help us." I said, "Sure, happy to have a chat about that." She then said, "Well, I'm really busy, and the only time I can talk to you is about 7 o'clock in the evening." And I had to say what I call the polite no. I said, "Look, I'm sorry to hear that. It sounds like you're really busy. That's great. Great, you got all these clients. Unfortunately, I don't really work those hours. It's just my personal choice." She said, "Oh well, I'll see what I can do." And um, but we never spoke. We never spoke because she couldn't find time in the day, and I wasn't prepared to bend my rules. Now, some people said, "But Parag, that was an opportunity for you." Yes, absolutely it was. But if I started breaking my own rules about how I wanted to run my business, I've lost control again. I've lost control. And that even goes for lead opportunities. It absolutely goes for meetings. Oh, Prague, yeah, let's have a chat. Let's have a coffee. No, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to ask you some questions. Oh, what would you like to chat about? What's the agenda? Tell me a bit more about what you want to do from that. Just ask some questions just to test out whether it's just a speculative chat. How much time is it going to take? What? Because I have a militant mindset. Because I have to. Because I have to. Um, and I talk about this word boundaries, and I have put up a lot of boundaries. And one of them is physical, by the way. So I'm sat here in my office. I've had this office for about 12 years in central London. Now, I don't work at home, primarily because I don't really enjoy it. I grew up in the area where you always worked in an office. But secondly, I have a door, and that door is always closed. And my team, we're nine now. My team all do work remotely, and some of them sometimes they come in, but that door 99% of the time is shut, and it's me on my own in this office, and I love it because I can tell you I get far more done now in my 32 hours a week than I used to get done in my 60 hours a week. Why? Because I have boundaries. I have a physical boundary called the door, and I have other boundaries like my phone. My wife knows it's going to be quite hard to get hold of me in the working day. Outside of the working day, it's the other way round. My clients know they're not going to get hold of me. But I have clear boundaries between when am I working and when am I not working. And if I choose to break those boundaries, it's a conscious choice. But without those boundaries, it all gets blurred. Business, personal, clients, team, it all just ends up in this mess of overwhelm. And that got me, that didn't get me the life I wanted. it almost finished me off. So those boundaries are super important for me. And I'm ruthless with my diary. I mean, I've always been ruthless, even more ruthless. By ruthless, I mean I rigorously plan where I spend my time. And I always talk about this. So I just thought today, before I left the office last night, I actually took a picture of my diary. And I'm going to show it to you. Just an example, because I took a picture of my diary for a month's time. So this is my diary on the for the 18th to 22nd of May. The reason I'm sharing this, so the green stuff is coaching sessions. Yep. My diary is already fairly thoroughly planned out, even for a month's time. Now I've got all my team meetings on Monday. I have a regular 9:45. I can see I've got a training day in there as well with my fellow coaches, which I may or may not go to depending on what else I choose to do on Monday. But I've got my regular weekly finance meeting. I've got a regular goal OKR meeting with one of my team. I've got another meeting with my COO. I'm doing a webinar on the Tuesday. I've got a training session with one of our clients. Oh, look at that. I've got cricket on Thursday afternoon. I'm leaving the office at 3:30. And on Friday, actually, I'm doing a training session with my team on Thursday. Friday, I've got a reminder that my kids are at home because apparently they've got some school training day and they're not at work. Sorry, they're not at school. So I'm going to go back home that day. It has to be planned. It has to be planned. Otherwise, this thing falls apart into chaos. And that's my diary for a month's time. Obviously, most of that will fill up. That's just, it hasn't got any of my sales stuff in there or marketing stuff in there, but everything else is already pre-planned. The other thing is, I had this mindset shift. I have to shift into more of a leadership identity. Now, what does that mean? What does that actually mean? I'm going to give you a couple of practical things I did. Number one, affirmations. Now, I haven't got time to go into what are affirmations and why are they important and what's the neuroscience behind that. You can check that out online, and there's so much being written and talked about in terms of affirmations. But one of my key affirmations was, I'm a great and inspiring leader for my high performing team. So I had to affirm myself of that every day, or better, many times a day, until it became who I was. I knew I had to build a great team, a high performing team, a team that I can inspire, a team that could step up. And at the time, I didn't have that. I had to work on that identity to believe and understand that that's the leader I needed to be. Because without a great team, it was going to be very hard for me to offload and delegate a lot of the things I needed to offload and delegate. So I had to build that mindset through affirmations. I also had to get really, really clear on goals, not just for the business, but for them. So every one of my team has OKRs. Again, I've talked about OKRs in one of my January webinars and setting yourself up for success using the OKR system from Microsoft. The goals and the actions you need to achieve those goals. We don't just have those for our business. We have those for every member of our team. They all have their own goals, their own action plans that are tracked and recorded. So they know exactly what they're responsible for. Otherwise, how can I expect them to deliver if they haven't got that clarity? So the OKR system, and all our clients use this, of course, and we use it, but everyone in our team has this clarity. So they know where to focus. Because I could not do everything in the business. So I had to apply Pareto, the Pareto principle, the 80-20 rule. Where is my time best spent and focused to get 80% of the results in our business? What does that really look like? So that I could lock myself away in this office and go into deep work mode, i.e. undistracted. Deep Work by Cal Newport, great TED Talk, great book. I had to go into deep work mode for those 6 hours a day when I was doing the school runs. Yeah, it was intense, but yes, it was also productive. I had to know where to focus and therefore what not to do. And what not to do had to go into other team members' goals. Because if I didn't define it, how are they meant to know? How are they meant to know? And the other thing, of course, recruitment was critical. I was absolutely obsessed with recruitment. And what I mean by that, so this is a quote from Jim Collins again, from Good to Great. He talks about the first who and then what principle. That the most important thing to build a great team is to find the right people for your bus. And that meant my recruitment process. For example, there's three other coaches in my team, Cooks, Dan, and Margarita. Each one of those recruitment processes took about a year, not a couple of months, not a couple of weeks, a year. Because of what he says here, the degree of sheer rigor in people decisions in order to take a company from good to great. The highest performing companies were absolutely rigorous about how they found the right people. And I knew I had to be the same. I was paying out these salaries. It was scary, big salaries. I mean, Cooks actually was a client. Cooks was a client, and we had such an impact on his life. He said, Parag, I want to do what you do. I said, that's great, Cooks. Get in the recruitment process. And a year later, I got him on the team. And I knew him really well. I knew he loved what we do. I knew he got it. But I had to put him through the process. I had to test him. Margarita, I didn't even have a job for her. She's our accountability coach. I didn't even offer her a job. There was no job. She kept saying, Parag, I really want to work for you. I love what you do. I said, go away, go away. And then she kept telling me all this stuff she wanted to do and these values and these things she wanted to be involved with. That took a year because I had to get the right people for this bus. And of course, the biggest mistake most businesses make is their recruitment is slipshod and rushed. It's not given the level of importance that it deserves. And the other thing when I recruited was every one of our team know this principle. I think some of you know this principle as well. The point of choice and the fact that no matter what's going well or what's not going well, there is no room for victim mindset, i.e. blame, excuse, and denial. What's happened here? Why is this goal not being achieved? What stopped you? We can't just lapse into those classic excuses and the blame culture. They all understand that they have their own responsibility and ownership to perform, to own the goals that they have, and to deliver them. They understand that that is the culture that we have here, and that's the culture actually that most people in a team want. They don't want to be treated like children and be babysat. So that's the culture I've defined. It's certainly one of the points of culture that I've defined. That every one of you should have the culture, the behaviors that you want to see in your teams. That should be defined. And my team know that, yeah, it's a no babysitting culture. I am not their superhero. They are their own superheroes. They have ownership and responsibility. They've been rigorously recruited. Of course, they get training and support. And there's a culture of learning here. But they are responsible for their performance because I don't have the time to constantly be going backwards and forwards with them. And that's what makes recruitment harder because you have to find people who align with this value system, who align with this behavior. Many don't. Many don't. But everyone who joins our team knows this in the recruitment process, not after they join. It's clearly explained in the recruitment process so that those who don't want this culture don't join our organization. They don't have to join. Go and work somewhere else and ruin their business. All right. As you can tell, I'm pretty passionate about sharing this just because it's literally changed my life. And as ever, all I can advocate to every one of you is what are you going to do, guys? What are you going to do? What action can you take from everything I've shared with you today? What can you take that's going to have an impact on the business and the life you want to have? You decide, your choice, but make that choice, please.